There's different levels of understanding. But math doesn't work that way, because the answer is right or it's wrong. So now I have a classroom management problem. But in math, there really is the same thing, and if we switch to focusing more on making the kids responsible for producing things that make their understanding visible, like explanations and arguments, we're going to start being more like English class or writer's workshop or something. We're going to start seeing the differences in ways that we can do something about them. So I divide the level of learning, these are target levels, into 4 levels. And the highest level is you understand it well enough to explain it to others. When I start my lesson, that's my goal. I want all my kids to get to that level. For what I'm teaching, I can only afford 2 or 3 days for what I'm teaching. 2 or 3 days, can I get all my kids to that level? Probably not. That's all I can afford, though. If I had a week, I could probably get almost all of them. Here's another level, next one down. Good enough so that when we get to the next topic, I can learn it. The problem is the Japanese are aiming at this and getting it from a bunch of their kids, getting this from most of their kids. They settle for this with some kids some days. Our problem is we're aiming for this. We're aiming low. The kids who understand it well enough to explain it to others are an asset to the others in the class. They learn more deeply by explaining. We know that from teaching, that you think you understand something, but our internal, we hold ourselves to a sloppy standard. When you have to explain it to someone else, you discover you didn't understand it as clearly as you thought. Explaining it to others is good for you. If you're a really bright kid, it's really good for you. This is an important life skill. The smarter you are, the more important it is. And it's not easy, so it keeps them challenged. So here is one. Here in this country, if the kids are getting the answers fast, our idea is to move them on to the next topic. And we start thinking about tracking and all of that sort of stuff and giving them more advanced, accelerating them. In Japan, until this 15-year-old, we hold them to a higher standard of work in the same topic everybody else is working on. So they may get a more challenging question thrown at them. They have to get a good explanation. They may get a more challenging question about the same problem or a more challenging problem on the same topic, but they don't move on to the next topic. These kids can profit from tutoring. They can get tutoring from these 2 groups of kids. So if we're aiming here, we're creating this asset that can be used by the others. Always, some of the kids are going to need out of class help. That's never going to go away, no matter how good. You're never going to solve the problem for all of the kids all of the time by PD and by having great teachers. In Finland and everywhere, they have after-school tutoring. This blue arrows are prior knowledge. This is my starting place for the lesson and my planned ending place. This is the American model. We assume it's all roughly the same. So we plan, it'll take this time. And if it were the same, that would work. And we use the I explain it, we do it together, you do it alone, I check your understanding. They use this model in Singapore and Japan only when they're pretty sure the prior knowledge is like this. And how often is that? 1/3 of the time. So if I've been teaching you a particular thing for a week, at the end of that week, I can do this. But I would never do it at the beginning of the week. This is more like what it usually is. Prior knowledge all over the place. So if I plan the starting point here, it's way too far for these kids. If I move it back to here, it's too far back for these kids. So it's a triage. Every teacher faces this. Where am I going to put it? Wherever I put it, it's not going to be, it's going to be wrong for 2/3 of my kids. So I decide which kids I'm going to do it for. and their human nature takes over. I'll do it for the kids who appreciate my effort. Right? Isn't that the natural thing? Who am I going to pay attention to? I'm going to pay attention to the kids who appreciate it when I pay attention to them. Well, that's the kids who don't want to be paid attention to are the ones we need to pay attention to. So so this kind of lesson planning isn't going to work. So what happens? This is what will happen. It'll work for 2 of the kids and 3 of the kids will crash. But as teachers, we're not dumb. We see this coming. We're not going to let it happen. This is going to feel like a failed lesson. So we make an adjustment. We change the goal to answer getting. When we change the goal to answer getting, I can get all my kids to get the answer. If I pretend the purpose of this lesson is for everyone to produce the answers, one way or another, I'll get all of the kids to produce the answers. The problem with that is, even the students who could have learned to a higher level don't get to learn to the higher level because they were aiming too low. So instead of me showing them what to do to start with, I give them the problem. They have their different ways of thinking. Dragonfly flies 50 meters in 2 seconds. How long does it take to fly 375 yards, or 375 meters? We gave this problem to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in San Francisco and had them do think alouds and write how they did it. All the grade levels had the same distribution. The most common way of doing it was 50 meters in 2 seconds, 100 meters in 4 seconds, 200 meters in 8 seconds. They eventually get to 400 meters, 16 seconds, a little less. They get the answer. What grade level math are they using to solve that 6th grade problem? It's a 2nd grade. Skip counting. So they're using 2nd grade math. That's their way of thinking about that problem. That's good. It's good problem solving. I'm happy. I like that way of thinking. That's prior knowledge for my whole class. I want my whole class to understand the 6th grade idea, which is going to be unit rate, how it relates to skip counting. And this kid just did it for me. He put the skip counting on the table. I had him at the board. He did it. But I don't want to settle for that kid. I want him to have the 6th grade understanding, way of thinking. So next kid comes up. I'm picking these kids. He does a table. That's 4th grade. So the table's up there on the same board with the skip counting. And I want the skip counter to understand the table. I'm trying to get the 2nd grade thinking up to 4th grade. So I keep asking the 4th grade kid to explain it to the 2nd grade kid. How is that like skip counting? Why do you have the same numbers in your table that they had skip counting? I keep asking about the relationship between